about this in the last video, but any time you undertake writing academically, you want to be sure that you are treating it as a process. Again, not just sitting down an hour before the assignment is due and kind of typing out a substandard essay. There are definite things you need to do to prepare and things that need to be done afterwards. And in this course, we have to do them. We have to do a draft because you get a grade for it. We have to do peer reviews because you get a grade for those. We have to do a final draft because you get a grade for it. But in other classes, I want you to be sure as you're writing for psychology and history and government and biology and calculus that you undertake the writing process, all of the steps in the writing process before you submit your final work. So before we talk about the structure and organization of an essay and the process that we undertake, I just kind of want to give everyone a brief overview of what an essay is. It's really a group of paragraphs about one subject. So an essay covers one main central subject. It's kind of like a paragraph. In a paragraph we have a topic sentence, we have supporting sentences, and we have a concluding sentence. In an essay, we have an introductory paragraph that is like that topic sentence, and then we have several body paragraphs, and we have a concluding paragraph. But they're all connected together. They're all about one thing. They all explain one main or controlling idea with details, facts, and examples. But it's not just a padded paragraph. You're not taking an idea that could be explained well in one paragraph and just padding it so much that it's a couple of pages long. An essay is longer because it explains a more complicated idea. The paragraphs in an essay are part of a larger whole, so each one has a special purpose. The introductory paragraph opens up the essay. It tries to catch the reader's interest. Of course, I will read your essay no matter what, because it's my job to do so and give you feedback. But consider your audience someone who's not required to read the essay. You want to interest them in what you have to say, and also just keeping me in mind, your true audience. I read thousands and thousands of essays a year, and so you want to be sure that in your introductory paragraph it catches my attention and it's something that I haven't seen before. Now, we still want to adhere to the standards of academic tone and things like that, but you want to introduce it, you want to grab your reader's attention. In addition to grabbing your reader's interest, you need to be sure that your introductory paragraph has a thesis statement. We're going to talk about thesis statements in just a bit. The thesis statement is one sentence that states the main idea of the entire essay. So that's the introductory paragraph, and every essay needs to have an introduction. The body of the essay is going to consist of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of depending on what you're writing about, how long your essay is supposed to be. Each body paragraph makes one different point about the main idea. And then we have a conclusion, which brings the essay to a close. And it can be, it can be shorter. You don't want to introduce any new ideas into a conclusion. You just kind of want to restate the thesis, re-examine the topic, leave your reader with something to think about. So what I want you to do now is I want you to look at your essay and with your highlighter and your editing tools, and I want you to answer these questions. Did your essay that you wrote, your first draft, follow the standard structure? Does it have an introductory paragraph, body paragraphs, and a concluding paragraph? And you also want to be sure that each paragraph makes one point about your topic. So you can pause the video now while you take a look at your essay. Again, you're looking for structure, standard structure, and whether each point in each paragraph in your essay makes one separate, distinct, different point about your topic. You can pause the video now, and once you've done that, please resume. You also want to be aware of the writing process. Pre-writing, when we're pre-writing, we're getting started. Before you start writing your essay, you really need to understand the situation, the rhetorical situation. And rhetorical means the method of communication or the purpose of our our essay? Are we writing to give examples? Are we writing to persuade or to argue or to compare and contrast or talk about cause and effect or explain a process? You have to know ahead of time what your purpose is, what the rhetorical situation is, what it is you're supposed to be doing with this essay. You want to narrow the topic. You want to be sure that you form a thesis statement before you begin writing the paper. Develop ideas for your composition, draft and outline, and then reorder your ideas and link them if necessary. Outlining is a really, really important part of the pre-writing process before you even start to draft. If you don't have a good outline, you don't have a good map for where you're going with your essay, then you're not going to be as successful as you could be otherwise. So in everything that you write for this class and in all of your other classes, you need to start with a good outline. The second phase in the writing process is drafting, is putting it down on paper and putting it in an essay form, which is what you've already turned in that first draft. And many of you I know sat down to write the first draft without doing the steps in the pre-writing process. Again, we're learning in this class to consider it as a process and not just sitting down to write the first draft. So after you've done your pre-writing, you've constructed your thesis statement, you've created an outline, you know all of the ideas that you're going to include in the order that you're going to include them, then you sit down and you use your outline to write the paper, the draft. And really you're just getting it on paper. My son, who is in junior high, takes writing classes, and they call phase 2 the sloppy copy phase, which I think is so funny. And this is, it's going to be a little bit rough. It's not going to be perfect, but it needs to be a good representation of what your final draft is going to be. Now, in between the drafting process, phase 2, the writing phase, and revision and editing, some ideas are going to be added, some are going to be dropped. Things will change, absolutely. But if you do your work ahead of time, again, in the first phase and in this phase, then your work in the third phase won't be so heavy. The third phase is, again, often skipped by students: revising, editing, and proofreading. When we revise, we improve our ideas, our organization, our voice, which is an academic tone for our purposes. We do peer review in revising. And when we revise, we're really looking for thoughts and ideas. Does this make sense? Have I said everything I need to say? Editing and proofreading is style and grammatical correctness. This is where you're going to go back and you're going to make sure that you have the commas where they need to go, and that all of your sentences are complete sentences, and that you have sentence variety, and so on and so forth. They should be treated as two separate things. You should revise for ideas, then you should go back and revise for style and grammatical correctness. They should be done separately. If you do them at the same time, if you try to look at your ideas and your style and your grammar all together, then what you're going to end up doing is focusing on grammar to the detriment of your ideas. And the ideas are the thing. The ideas are the big thing that you're wanting to convey to your readers. So those two things need to be done separately. Then you need to print it, revise it, edit it, proofread it. Again, repeat. Print it, revise it, edit it, proofread, repeat. And you notice that I say print. I would never suggest that you proofread, that you do phase 3 of the writing process, revising, editing, and proofreading from a computer screen. It doesn't work. You need to print it out, you need to have it on a piece of paper, and you need to have your editing tools, your colored pens, and your highlighters out. You need to mark it up, and that just isn't possible on a computer screen. And please trust me when I say I've taught writing for many, many, many semesters. And students who revise from the screen rather than on a hard copy don't do as well. And once you've done it 3 times, that's the magic number for me, 3 rounds of revision and editing, then you're ready to submit it. And every time you look at it, every time you put eyes on it, you're going to find something else that needs to be changed. And also I would recommend that you give yourself some time. Of course, that requires that you don't procrastinate, but you want to give yourself some time in between revisions so that your brain can kind of think about it in the background. So that's the last phase. Now, in the first phase, the pre-writing phase, we write the thesis statement. And this is the big thing. The thesis, the thesis, the thesis. You're going to hear this a million times over the course of your college career. The thesis statement is kind of like the topic sentence of a paragraph, except it's applicable to the entire essay. And it has a main idea and a controlling idea. And the main idea is the subject of the essay, the topic. The controlling idea is the angle that the writer is taking about the topic, the opinion or angle that the rest of the essay will support and discuss. You want to be sure as you're writing your thesis statement that you replace really vague words with more exact words and vague ideas with more exact information. And if a subject naturally has 2, 3, or 4 divisions, stating the divisions in the thesis statement can help set up an outline for your paper. So if you're talking about, let's say, compare and contrast. So you want to be sure in your thesis statement, and you want to write this down so that as you're crafting your thesis statements later, you have this information. You want to be sure that you mention the topic. So let's say we are comparing and contrasting New York City and Lubbock, Texas. Okay, so we want to be sure that we talk about our topics. We mention those in the thesis statement. New York City, Lubbock, Texas needs to be in the thesis statement. What are we doing? What is our method of development? We are comparing and contrasting, talking about similarities and differences. That needs to be mentioned in the thesis statement. We also want to be sure that we have a controlling idea, what we're saying about it. And let's say that I'm going to talk about how they have many similarities and differences in respects to weather, population, and tourism. Okay? Somehow I've got to craft a thesis statement that has all of those things in it. So my thesis statement might be something like, New York City and Lubbock, Texas may seem very different, but they're similar in many ways, especially in weather, tourism, and population. I think that's the other one I said. Now, obviously, Lubbock and New York City are not the same, but it's just an example, all right? So what I'm saying is that they're the same. What I'm doing is comparing and contrasting. My divisions are listed there, and then I'd have a paragraph about tourism, Lubbock and New York, a paragraph about population, Lubbock and New York, a paragraph about weather, Lubbock and New York. All right, so that's the thesis statement, and everything in your paper has to be related back to the thesis statement. Now, here are some things you need to avoid. You do not want to have a heavy-handed thesis statement that says, now I will write about. Number one, you're not ever going to use first person in your essays. So you're not going to say, now I will write about, or this essay will discuss. You don't want to mention the essay either. Don't mention the essay, don't mention yourself, don't announce what you're going to do. I'm going to do this, just do it. A thesis statement is not a fact. Lubbock, Texas has a population of 500,000 people, cannot be a thesis statement because that's a provable fact. You don't want to oversimplify or be too specific, all right? Ask yourself the question, if everything in the paper has to be directly related to this thesis, and I explore the topic fully, is the paper going to be too long? If it's too long, then you're oversimplifying in your thesis statement. You need to narrow it down a little bit. If it's too short, you've been too specific, and you need to broaden your thesis statement just a bit. So now what I want you to do is get out your paper copy, and I want you to look for the thesis statement in your introductory paragraph. And you're writing about the 3 topics that were in the prompt in the first draft instructions. So can you identify a thesis statement that it tells your reader exactly what the entire essay is going to be about? And it should name the topic, traits of a good writer, traits of a successful college student, and what you're going to say about it, what your essay is going to explore, your angle, your take on this subject. Does it follow the guidelines? If it doesn't, then you need to rewrite the thesis statement. You can pause the video here, and when you're done identifying your thesis statement, you can resume. All right, now that you've identified the thesis statement, we want to talk a little bit about the topic sentences in each of your body paragraphs. The body paragraphs are all individual points. So each body paragraph should make 1 point about the topic sentence. About the thesis statement, and the topic sentences of those body paragraphs need to be directly related to the thesis statement. So not only do we need to remind our reader what the thesis statement is in the topic sentence of our paragraphs, we need to tell them what this paragraph is going to be about, okay? So if I'm writing about traits of a good college student, that's my thesis statement. There are several things college students need to do in order to be successful. That's my thesis statement. My topic is traits of a successful college student. What I'm saying about it, the controlling idea, is that there are several things that need to be done. So my first body paragraph is going to start with a topic sentence that reminds me of my thesis, successful college student, and tells my reader what that particular paragraph is going to be about. So my first body sentence could be something like, the first trait of a successful college student is always going to class. I've reminded my reader of the thesis, and I've told them what this paragraph is going to be about. All of your topic sentences should be directly related to the thesis. Should remind the reader in some way of your thesis. And if you feel like you're being too obvious, don't. Because we want our reader to understand very clearly exactly what it is we're doing. And you can do this, again, by repeating the words, traits of a good college student, traits of a good college student, or by using synonyms, and get out your thesaurus and what is another good word for traits if you feel like you're being a little bit too repetitive. So the topic sentences in each of your body paragraphs should, number 1, remind the reader of the thesis through repetition or synonyms, and number 2, explain to the reader what that paragraph is going to be about, what that paragraph is going to detail. So, pause again, get out your copy, look at your topic sentences. Do the topic sentences. The first sentence in each of your paragraphs, does it explain what point the paragraph will be making? And are the topic sentences in each of your body paragraphs directly related to the thesis? Once you've done that, then you're done evaluating structure and organization, and you can move on to the next video.